Well, hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Here we are on a Thursday night, the 4th of April, 2019. And on the 4th of April, 1974, or 45 years ago today, was what is considered to be the worst outbreak of tornadoes in the United States in a single day. And also not only because of the number of tornadoes that occurred that day, there were also the startling number of those tornadoes were F3s, F4s, and even a couple of F5s, which are extremely rare. We haven't seen an F5 tornado, by the way, since the tornado in Moore, Oklahoma, and that was back in 2013. But there was actually a worse outbreak. I forgot the month it was. I believe it was in 2011 in terms of the number of tornadoes. It was 338, but that was sort of spread out over a course of days. And the magnitude of this particular outbreak, it's considered by a number of experts to be the one that is the worst. I pulled up a few things to look at, and there are some really good websites around where you can get all sorts of statistics and numbers. But I really think it's the Weather Service's website that has everything all on one page. I put the link up on the chat for you, and in case you missed it, I'll put it up again in a minute or two. Let me just set it up. I've said many times, as far as sources of information, our National Weather Service is front and center the best. I mean, they put so much out there, and it's really easy to find if you just Google around. So the site is weather.gov. Well, I'll put it in the chat here. But if you Google the tornado outbreak of April 1974, just go to the Weather Service's link there, and it's titled "The Super Outbreak of 1974." Let me get that window up here for you. There you go. And there's pictures, there's videos. There's a 15-minute video on there here. But what stands out is the fact that this outbreak, which occurred on the 3rd and 4th, 1974, the super outbreak affected 13 states from the Great Lakes to the Deep South. 148 tornadoes documented from this event. 95 of them were rated F2 or stronger. 30 were either F4s or F5s. And aside from all the catastrophic damage it left behind, the tornadoes resulted in 335 deaths and over 6,000 people being injured. I pulled up a couple of interesting maps here. There's one that you can get from that page that actually shows the track of these storms that occurred. I've widened it out. I wanted to just really quick show you the path, the track of the F5 tornado that moved through Xenia, Ohio, and there was another one that moved a little later after the Xenia, Ohio tornado occurred. Later on that evening, there was one just outside of Cincinnati, and that would be number 43 here. The number of tornadoes is really staggering when you break it down from state to state. And here we are. You can see Ohio and Indiana, two of the hardest hit states in all of this. Kentucky also very hard hit. Number of tornadoes here were F4s. You go down into further south into Tennessee, and further south from there into Alabama and Georgia. They were all numbered one after the other. This particular one, number 101, had quite a life here, going from an F0, peaking at an F5, and then gradually weakening, but it held its own as an F2, F3 tornado until it finally disappeared when it reached up into near Huntsville in Alabama. Just here's how it looks on the wider picture. The track on that is, I'm not sure exactly the number of miles here, but I'm just trying to judge off the top of my head. Here's Birmingham, Meridian, Columbus, Mississippi, and then running up over toward Huntsville, Alabama. So that was quite the distance here of that tornado. These are 3 of them that near Athens, Georgia, and on up goes northeastward. You had this one peaked at an F5. Then it looks like a new one formed just to the northwest of it, and you wound up with that going to an F4 for a rather long period of time. Weakens to a 3, gets back to a 4, and then finally dies out. Again, this is really a very good site to go through. If you haven't, tornadoes are uncommon in the Northeast. Not that they don't happen, but certainly they don't happen in the regularity that you see in the Midwest and in the Plains. But you know, just to kind of grasp all of this, it's pretty hard to come to terms with something so destructive. And here's what it looked like, by the way, on the surface map on that particular day. It's a little hard to see. This was a hand-drawn map from the Weather Service for the day. But you had a really wrapped up cyclone. That is a 986 low that is sitting in northwestern Missouri. And the warm sector, of course, flooding the southeast, the central and eastern Gulf states, the southeast, and on up through the southern mid-Atlantic and into the Ohio Valley with really very, very warm, super tropical air. You had dew points in the 70s all the way up through northern Alabama and northern Georgia. So this was a really, really wrapped up cyclone. I don't know what the dynamics looked like aloft, but when you see a surface low this intense, just think of that nor'easter a couple of days ago that was well offshore. I mean, that got down into the mid 980s in terms of pressure, and put that strength of storm in the month of April in northeastern Missouri, and you're going to have you're going to have a super outbreak to come out of this. So again, I'll put that link back up on there in the chat board here. Hang on one second, and help yourselves to it. By the way, in terms of overall numbers, just to give you perspective here, at least so far, 139 tornadoes. I pulled these. There's a lot of different stats. You got to kind of thumb through them, because there's reported tornadoes and confirmed tornadoes. So I kind of went with the confirmed ones. In 2018, we had 1,154 tornadoes. The average number of tornadoes every year in the U.S. is 1,253. In 2017, it was 1,429. In 2016, it was 976, and in 2015, it was 1,199 total tornadoes. And the most in the last 20 or so years was in 2004, 1,819 tornadoes reported in the United States. And so far, I think at least through mid-March, I don't know if this number 139. I think this is through the month of March. There have been 139 tornadoes, and we still have April, May, June to go. And of course, you can get them in the summertime too. Any tornadoes that occur in the calendar year, they all count. All right. So again, we'll go to that the website. It's from the Weather Service. The super outbreak of April 3rd, 4th. 1974, if you'd like to see some more information on it. So let's now go to what's going on right now and take a look at our surface map, which we had this bone dry air mass in the east. High pressure is sitting over Lake Huron. There is chilly air coming down, relatively speaking, and I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'll bring it a little tighter. You've got single-digit dew points in parts of upstate New York. There was a fire weather warning up from northeastern New Jersey through much of southern New England, but that's all done now. That will be done at 8 o'clock tonight. But again, dew points very, very dry, we had relative humidities last night at 9 o'clock at night that were running in the mid-teens. And in fact, I saw that LaGuardia at one point had a relative humidity of 10%. I think, I seem to recall a day in the last couple of years in the spring where we had single-digit relative humidity show up in a few places. But 10 is, pretty much as low as you could possibly see. It was like being in the desert around here. And now we're setting up, of course, you've got this frontal boundary that runs across the mid-Atlantic states back into the middle Mississippi Valley. There's a little low there in North Texas with a warm sector moving through southern Louisiana. That is producing some weather tonight, and we actually do have a watch box in play at the moment, but I figured let's go to the radar first. It's been pouring rain ahead of that warm front. There were numerous flash flood warnings up that I saw throughout much of southern Louisiana. There's a break in the action, but as of 7:39, there is a severe thunderstorm watch that has gone up in the southwestern part of that state, and we're seeing an outbreak of strong thunderstorms here, so I imagine that some of those could be severe. This is where the SPC has got its risk area set up for today. And here it is on from SPC. Your blue box is your severe thunderstorm watch. It includes also a small portion of east and southeast Texas, and that area of slight risk is covering East Texas and through much of the state of Louisiana, and that's all encased inside an area of marginal risk. There's not much else going on thunderstorm-wise in the U.S. except for a small area there in southern Idaho, northeastern Nevada, and northwestern Utah, where there is the risk of just general thunderstorms, not pointing out to any kind of severe risk in that area. Okay, so oh, that's me. I didn't want me. Sorry. Let me go back to the bottom. Put myself in the corner here. There's another map in here somewhere. And yep, here's that's the window. Oh, I'm having a day, folks. You're getting toward the end of the week. I'm starting to lose it here. I guess I'm going to have to see. There it is. That's the one I wanted. It's in the corner. Okay, so looking at watches and warnings right now, and of course, again, remember with severe weather, folks, this is stuff you're seeing is dated, so you want to make sure you go to your local National Weather Service office website to check the latest on any kind of severe weather and weather watches and warnings, and you can find them by going to weather.gov. Right now, that Salmon area in eastern Louisiana, in southwestern Louisiana, eastern Texas, that's your severe thunderstorm watch. The red flag warnings up from northeastern New Jersey through southern and central New England. Those will be coming down shortly. We have a couple of winter weather advisories up in northern Maine and also into a small portion of southwestern New York with the weather that's headed there for Friday, and also in northern Michigan. A small area of winter weather advisories for the Sierra Nevadas, and also some flood watches that are up in northwestern California and into parts of southern Oregon as there's more Pacific moisture that is coming into play. I found my WPC map. I misplaced it the other day. There it is. There we go. So we'll bring it up. I always say the Weather Prediction Center's preset map is always a good thing to look at because they do a very good job. So this is over the next 7 days. And as far as the Northeast is concerned, we've got an event for tomorrow into Friday night, early Saturday, and then another one for Sunday night into Monday, and then another one for later next week. So that will cover the first two here. And we are showing a couple of inches of rain being generated from whatever happens later tomorrow night, and again for Sunday night into Monday and Monday night. The system for Sunday night into Monday and Monday night, that is a warm front that looks like it's going to try and get by and may succeed, and then we're going to have a cold front come in behind it later in the day, Monday into Monday evening, with some showers and maybe even a couple of thunderstorms. I don't think it'll be severe. There might be a severe weather risk early next week in the southeast, but the southeast, maybe into the mid-Atlantic states ahead of that cold front, but we'll get to that in a second. The rainfall forecast over the next 7 days across the Gulf states is pretty substantial, with some 3, 4, 5-inch amounts along the Florida Panhandle and the immediate Gulf Coast, and then in an area from northeastern Texas on up through parts of Arkansas, another patch that's sitting up in northeast Georgia, northwest South Carolina, and then also along the North Carolina coast. Everybody, for the most part, east of the Rockies is going to see a fair amount of precip in the next 7 days with 3 weather systems in play. And in the west, while there is rain indicated down to Southern California and beyond, that's mostly under half an inch. But once you get north of San Francisco, and particularly as you move up the coast and into Oregon and Washington, it looks like pretty hefty rainfall amounts there. Many areas forecasting 5 inches or more over the next 7 days. So busy pattern ahead. We talked last night about the blocking pattern that is setting up, and we're going to address that today because one of the things that you have to be really careful of when you're dealing with these blocking patterns on the model runs is that oftentimes the models really have a tough time with it, and in some runs it'll be stronger, some runs it will be weaker. Haven't shown the teleconnections in a while because the teleconnections all point to this, and okay, here we go. I know that the snow lovers are going to see this negative NAO, which goes very, very strongly negative between next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And this was the kind of thing you were hoping to see during the winter time and never did get an opportunity to see it, but you're seeing it now. And by the way, let me just make this point. Blocking in the springtime is pretty normal. We see a gradual breakdown of the polar jet. The atmosphere is transitioning, coming out of winter, starting to warm. The polar jet weakens, so there's room for these blocking patterns to develop. In the wintertime, blocking patterns are a bit more elusive because the jet stream pattern across North America and across the North Atlantic and the Pacific are really at their strongest. So when you're talking about a block developing, you're basically rerouting a very, very powerful jet stream that wants to do its thing from west to east and move weather systems along. It doesn't make it. It doesn't mean that it's impossible that you can't get blocking in the wintertime. Of course you can, and when we have seen it often enough. But it's not something that shows up easily, and we have this tendency from weather models to, especially the GFS, likes to develop blocks in the wintertime in the long range, and 9 times out of 10 they don't wind up happening. So you got to be a little cautious when you look at these things in the wintertime. But here we are in the spring, and we are talking about 4 days from now, this NAO, which is already negative right now, going even more negative. Looking at some of the other teleconnections, you've got a positive Pacific North America index that goes down to the neutral line later next week and goes slightly negative. And the EPO, which is actually positive going into early next week, then goes negative, but not by a lot. It goes negative to some degree later next week, and then back to neutral, and then slightly negative. So that would at least to me point out that you might see some cooler than average temperatures. Doesn't mean it can't get warm, but on a given day or two, but the overall tendency might be for temperatures to average maybe close to normal, where one will offset the other. All right, so let's come back to the GFS from late this afternoon. If you look up at the the middle of the map, up near Greenland, you're going to see a high that's going to form there. The shading there, the color goes from blue to brown to almost red. There's your blocking high that builds over into Iceland and into Greenland, and then tries to build into Labrador. It seems like in the last couple of runs that this blocking high is not quite as strong as it was on a couple of the prior runs, where it was really forcing this jet in the eastern part of the United States to dip pretty far to the south. It looks more elongated east-west on the last several runs. It still, I think, makes for a very problematic forecast, because somebody is going to lie very close to a frontal boundary for a period of time, and it's going to, vacillate back and forth, and there are going to be forecasters who are going to have to battle with the possibility of it being in the low 40s on the north side of their forecast zones to mid 70s on the south side of their forecast zones. Anyhow, that block stays there in some fashion through the forecast period, so it keeps the jet stream suppressed to the south. We still have energy coming in off the Pacific, so you probably are going to see a parade of lows moving across the country every couple of days. The good thing is that at least that you're not locking a system up in one particular spot for a long period of time. So unlike yesterday and the specific, and especially the day before yesterday, where I kind of thought that maybe we were going to be in for some problems for a three or four day stretch. Now it looks more along the lines of that we'll have enough in there to move things along to a certain extent and keep things from getting too dreary for too long. So we'll run it back, and let's start with system number 1. And by the way, now that it's popped into my head, let me bring up. I want to bring up two things here, just to go back to SPC's forecast for Friday into Saturday. This is the severe weather risk that SPC sees for Friday into Saturday. It shifts back into Texas, into southwest Texas on Friday, and then there's also a marginal risk across the Florida Panhandle. On Saturday, on to the next one. On Saturday, this is from 12Z Saturday to 12Z Sunday, we have a pretty extensive area of slight risk being indicated. This is on their day 3 forecast. So I would bet, and judging from the dynamics involved, I would bet that we're going to wind up seeing an enhanced area of risk being forecast by the time we get there. So Saturday might be a pretty interesting day in the world of severe weather across much of East Texas, Louisiana, on up into Arkansas, and of course you've got this large area of marginal risk that goes all the way up to St. Louis in Missouri and east into western Tennessee and throughout much of the state of Mississippi. So just bear that in mind as we head into the weekend. Saturday might be a fairly busy day in the land of severe weather. So here's our surface map. This first system coming eastward, there's not really a whole lot to it, and with this cold high that's to the north, quote unquote cold high, if precip comes in fast enough tomorrow morning in northeastern PA, northwest Jersey, areas in the Hudson Valley north of Route 84 on up into the Catskills and into the Berkshires in Massachusetts, I think there could be a period of some snow or sleet at the start. I don't think it amounts to anything of consequence. Elevated areas might wind up with something, but an inch or two, I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. And that should be about it. This system is going to play itself through so that weather conditions will improve here in the east. So Saturday and Sunday, to me, for much of the folks that are in my area, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, I think the weekend looks decent. It's not going to be picture perfect because there'll be leftover clouds probably around Saturday morning and also late in the day Sunday as the next weather system approaches. You can see the precipits that's breaking out in central Texas and on up northward into the plains. That is the next system for late weekend, early next week. Meanwhile, in the west, we've got waves of moisture coming in off the west coast with storminess offshore, and it looks like a fairly strong arm comes inland Friday into Friday night, and you see that precip sweeping northwestward into Nevada and Idaho and Utah. And then there's yet another round more for the northwest as we head into Sunday. Out up in the West Coast, not so much into Central and Southern California. Does make it into Northern California with some heavy rains there. Now back to the east we go, because on Sunday low pressure is going to try to come out of the southern plains, and you can see the area that the GFS is indicating in the Gulf states and on up through the lower and middle Mississippi Valley. So we're going to probably see some thunderstorms here. I would suspect that risk of severe weather is going to shift eastward on Sunday, and then I think on Monday it'll probably move into the southeast and extending down into the eastern Gulf states. Meanwhile, watch the system for Sunday night, Monday. There's another warm front coming. This actually looks a lot like this one, only it's a little bit stronger. There's less cold air ahead of it. The air mass for the weekend is going to be reasonable. We'll be in the 60s here at least for Saturday and Sunday. Here's the next one for Sunday night, Monday. There's going to be a bit of an onshore flow setting up Sunday night into Monday. The models seem to want to push the warm front through. I would just be really cautious. This is a time of year where they can get hung up and you could be waiting all day. New York City seems to be sitting right along the line of will the front get through or will it not get through. The areas south of that warm front may be in line for some showers and perhaps even a couple of thunderstorms late Monday into Monday night. It all moves out, and if this plays according to my scenario, Tuesday of next week is going to be really nice. We're going to have temperatures in my area. I think a lot of spots are going to get to 70 or better, including some coastal areas with this. There's a second cold front that comes down with maybe a shower Tuesday night, and that has a cold high up in Canada. And now, of course, let's back off to the west. With all this energy coming into the west for later next week, here we've got a low that's going to produce some, I think, some significant snows in parts of Wyoming and Utah and Idaho, with rain extending into Nebraska and Kansas. It actually turns to snow before it ends. But there's a nice little low that comes out from there, and then that runs up towards the Ohio Valley and into western PA and western New York. If the block is stronger in the upper air when this scenario plays out, this could be something that winds up tracking a bit further to the south. You'll notice that on the upper air, we're going to go from a jet stream pattern that right now is basically moving things from west to east. As we move into next week, watch what goes on in eastern Canada. You have a trough that develops there with an upper low to the east, and it just kind of sits there and rotates. So now you got this energy that comes into the Pacific. It's going to try and move into that. It may wind up getting suppressed further to the south. So that's something we'll have to consider, is whether that we could wind up with a frontal boundary that sets up further south this time for later next week as a low comes out of the plains and then moves into the Ohio Valley. That could be a prolonged complication that develops where you could get into a situation where it's miserable for days at a time. And we still got more of this going. If we look at the long term, it still looks pretty blocky for the next couple of weeks. It comes and goes. The block will flex, then it'll weaken, and then it may flex again. So it's going to ebb and flow, and depending on where we're sitting in this ebb and flow process, is going to determine just what kind of fun we will or won't be having forecast-wise. I do not like the spring at all. From a forecasting standpoint, it's the worst time of year, especially in the Northeast. It's brutal. The temperature maps, looking at them yesterday, with the way they were handling the block, there was one point for Monday, I believe it was for Monday, where it had low 40s just north of New York City, and it had mid to upper 70s in southern New Jersey. And you didn't have to go that far down into southern New Jersey to get into the 70s. So imagine trying to forecast an over a 30-degree temperature spread in a matter of a couple of hundred miles. And you know you're gonna. That's like That's as hard as forecasting in a snowstorm to try to get the exact flake count. Very, very difficult to do. Here's what the GFS is rattling out with temperatures. Let me roll it back. And all right, so here we go for this is today's. So now tomorrow afternoon, with that warm front to the south and the onshore flow, you've got temperatures at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the upper 30s to low 40s. That's chilly, okay? And then we'll warm up Saturday because we'll break out into some sunshine. We've got 60s and we've got 70s down in Virginia and into Maryland. Back to Sunday, a little cooler, but still getting into the low 70s, possibly into southern New Jersey. We're starting out from a higher base here for the system for Sunday night and Monday. But here's Monday. The contrast here is a bit less than yesterday because it's trying to push that warm front further north. You've got 40s down into southern Connecticut, and probably, I would venture to say, there'll be 40s over eastern Long Island with this. And then you get into 50s and 60s in southern New Jersey, and then you've got middle and upper 70s in Maryland and down into Virginia, and you start to get into the 80s. That's why I'm thinking possibly for Monday in the Mid-Atlantic, particularly from Virginia southward, there could be a potential for severe weather risk there. And of course, the battle for the Northeast is going to be that warm front, and where does it get through? Either way, it's gone. And Tuesday, I think, is the day as we dry out behind it with northwest winds and with sunshine that we could see a large area where temperatures get into the 70s, and that could also again include the coast. So let's think about next Tuesday as being the pick of next week, as Joe Rayo would do, this pick of the week. Maybe next Tuesday for my neck of the woods will be the day where you might want to be off that day. Okay, but we'll see. All right, let me come to the chat board tonight. Nice to see you got a nice crowd on board. All right, guys, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm seeing it's Chris Eddy and 2 message retracted. So I don't know who those are. But Chris Eddy, thanks for hitting Super Chat. And I don't know who the other 2 people are because it says message retracted. Okay, but whoever you are, thank you very much for doing that. Jason Schaefer, nice to see you on board. Dio Nankumar, Anthony Orr is here tonight. Nice to see you here, Anthony. Donna Levasseur, firefighters having a hard time putting out fires in the windy weather. Yeah, I was, the wind still, I thought the winds would be lighter today than they were. They were rather breezy. It, gusts up over 20 to 30 miles an hour. Certainly not as high as yesterday, but I was a little taken aback by that. And the brush fires this time of year they're very, very tough to fight when you've got bone dry dew points and gusty winds the way we had it. At least the rainfall from tomorrow and tomorrow will put some moisture down in the ground, and that'll take care of it. And then we've got the next system for Sunday night into Monday. Chuck Cardillo is sitting up at 2,800 feet up in the Catskills, waiting to catch the flakes and ice pellets when they fall tomorrow, depending on how strong that first shot of precip is. But you've got your chance. Jason, you know what? If the precip tomorrow morning were to come in, I think it's possible that we could see, you could see some ice pellets. I wouldn't be shocked. I just wonder whether, a lot of the models seem to have that first round of precip tomorrow morning west of New York City. If that's the case, then, from a standpoint of timing, it would have to come in the morning for it to happen. And one of the things that might happen on Long Island tomorrow morning is you're still going to have this dry air. It has struck me tonight that even the high clouds are having a tough time coming in. So I wonder if tomorrow morning that the eastern part of Long Island, the eastern half of Long Island, may actually wake up to a nice sunrise before the clouds really completely take over, in which case I don't think there's going to be much of any precip tomorrow morning. But northeastern Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey, Hudson Valley, going north of Route 84, Could there be some wet snow and sleet mixing in at the start? Sure, why not? And then we'll get into the steadier rain. The steadier rain later on in the day. Dark Legend is sick and tired of winter, and it's the first time you've ever said that. You'll find, Dark Legend, that as you get older, I don't know how old you are, but as you get older, you will find yourself saying that more and more and more. Weather Channel forecasting 2 to 3 in Ulster County. Maybe a quick encore from the fat lady as your tornado forecasting saves. Now, thank you. Paul, I don't know. I mean, I have to think it's going to be elevation that will do it. The other thing is, remember, it's April, okay? I don't see it snowing so hard that you're going to be able to put down accumulations, except maybe on the coldest surfaces, because this is all coming during the day tomorrow. So, if we were seeing some heavy precip in that first burst in elevated areas, I'd say, okay, sure. But I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I'll go and look at it after I'm done with this and before I go on with Joe Rayo tonight. I'll give it a deeper look. But I don't know. It just didn't strike me as being anything significant, especially in the southern part of the Hudson Valley. Let's see. Mike Bologna, we don't want appendages from thunderstorms. This literally is restricted audiences, dangerous weather. Severe weather is not. Definitely do not want anything we want to fool around with. At least for us, for my area, we kind of have to wait another month or so. You get into May, and particularly you get into June and July. That's when, if we're going to get we get severe thunderstorms all the time. Tornadoes. Although in recent years there have actually been more tornadoes showing up in the Northeast, statistically, but usually when the Northeast gets them, it's from late May on into the summer months, and not so much in the early part of the severe weather season. The marine layer here, that wind off the ocean, much of the time prevents that. That marine layer comes in, it stabilizes the atmosphere, and you wind up with thunderstorms that, as they approach the coast, they tend to fall apart. Daphne, the German Shepherd puppy, supposed to get 1 to 3 in ice in Appalachian, New York. Well, I think further up you might have a bit of a better chance, but again, I'm just not really crazy bullish on it from what I'm seeing. And I know some of the snow maps on the models the last couple of days were putting some silly numbers. I mean, I think they had 1 foot numbers even down into southern New England, which was just plain nuts. Those maps are just not really all that useful. I just don't see this as I just don't see with what's coming in precip wise. Maybe I'll be surprised, but I promise I will give it a check in between now and when the Joe and Joe show shows up on Facebook in about an hour and 20 minutes. Okay, that's it. So let's wrap it up here tonight. Thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. As always, I have a great time with you guys. There are some nights where by the time we get to this time of the night, I'm starting to mentally get tired, and I'm thinking, maybe I won't do it. And then a lot of times when I sit down and actually start to do the show, once I get into it, I'm fine and dandy. So thanks for being patient with me. I sometimes lose my train of thought. It's from a long day of doing weather from start to finish, and that's why I've been taking these breathers from time to time. All right, so the Joe and Joe show tonight coming up at 9:25, so be sure to tune in for that. Let me just quickly give you an encouragement, perhaps. Appreciate that those of you that come on that support me on YouTube and by hitting Super Chat. Thank you very much, Chris Eddy, for doing that, and whoever the 2 other people were that your message was pulled. If you would like to really expand your weather experience for $2 a month, you can subscribe to my weather platform on Patreon. I have the link up there on the chat, and a number of you that are on this chat are also in Patreon. But in case there are a few of you that are thinking about it, you can talk to any of the other guys and ask them what their opinion is. And I'm not going to egg them on. They'll tell you what they think. In the meantime, download my weather app if you haven't already. It's absolutely free, and it's for all mobile devices. I am working on right now two things. There'll be a second app coming out that will also be free, and that is going to be run by my buddy that you might know if you're on my Facebook page, Angry Ben. That's what he goes by. He's the cigar smoking, whiskey drinking weatherman, and he helps me out with my website, nycweathernow.com. So I'm working on an app for him, which will be similar to the one I have. Also, will be available for free. And I will, when we got that all squared away, I'll let you know. But on the app itself, I'm attempting to make a couple of changes. One is when you, right now, you have to put in your location to get your own, for the forecast for your local area every single time you go on. You don't have to do that if you live in Long Island or near New York City. It's preset to iSlip, so you have to every time put in your zip code or your town or whatever. The geolocation will be working on the new update, and that means that when you go to look at your forecast, it'll take you to wherever you happen to be. So that'll give you one less thing to do. And the other thing I'm working on, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, is I would like to be able for people to go from my app to the Patreon platform straight from my app. So we're going to try to create a way where you can log in to Patreon from my app itself. This way you can seamlessly switch from my app over to the Patreon side if you're a Patreon member. Okay, so thanks again for being here. Let me put this link up for you for the Weather Service if you didn't see it from earlier and you want to go take a look at the tornado outbreak of April 3rd, 4th, 1974. The link is up there in the chat. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you hopefully later, if not tomorrow.